Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 231 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Adnan Ikic, at Say Which Way. Adnan, how we doing tonight?
Doing well. It was a very nice springtime day in Atlanta today. It hit 80 degrees. Beautiful, beautiful to go outside for a walk. It was no rain, very sunny. We've been getting some rain the past few days, so nothing reminds me of springtime more than March Madness and NFL free agency. So we'll be talking about the latter of the two tonight. So it was just a beautiful day, and can't wait to get into it.
Absolutely. Also joining us to get into free agency tonight is Allen Strk, at Allen Strk on Twitter. Very easy to remember. Allen, how we doing?
Doing very well. I'm surprised Adnan very joyful this morning, considering the state of Atlanta basketball. Don't have a head coach at the moment, but I guess it was a long time coming.
I'm not allowed to comment what I really think about the head coaching, but let's say that I'm not dissatisfied by the move. Let's say that yesterday I was very, very upbeat is all I'll say.
Okay. Yes. Won't comment, but encouraged for the future, perhaps, depending on what happens. So, we'll leave it at that. We don't want to get on any trouble here. We'll save the trouble for the free agency takes, which are going to come in, guys. Today we're going to be focusing on the secondary, cornerback, safety, which has become much more of a hot button topic over the last couple days after top safety prospect Jesse Bates was seen dining with the who's who of the Falcons secondary and also Kyle Pitts. So, plenty of speculation there. Definitely fun to see that. Doesn't matter or not, who knows? But it was interesting to see that. Definitely hope those guys were doing their best Cordell Patterson impression, trying to recruit him to Atlanta.
Nothing's going on. That's a harmless news story. It's fun, give me more of stuff like that. I know some people are like, oh, why are you writing about this? Who cares? But I mean, what else are we gonna talk about? Free agency hasn't started yet. The Super Bowl was weeks ago. Come on, it's fun. And I mean, hey, all of those guys share the same agent, but I think it is telling that the only players at that dinner were Bates and the only three Falcons who were represented by that agent. Nobody else. So maybe there's some smoke there. Maybe there's some fire. Who knows?
I read that piece and I just felt enthusiasm with every word as I was reading your piece on the story, because I was not aware of it, and I was just like, wait, what happened? I'm like, oh my god,
that's a great teaser. That's a great teaser. If anyone else would like to read that piece, thefalcoholic.com, your one-stop shop. So check that out. And well, we're just pros. We're just pros at segueing right now.
I love that. That was so smooth. It felt real, and it was real. There's no fake anything on here, guys. We're 100% real all the time here on the Falcoholic Live. Speaking of, what's up, Corey? Dr. Ganja, love that name, by the way. And Paul Mack, what's up, guys? Welcome in for tonight. On that note, everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're listening to the podcast audio after we record, leave that 5-star review. Still waiting to hear about where the podcast is going to go in terms of hosting. Not that matters to any of you guys, but once I have a firm grasp of that, I'll be able to tell you exactly what we're going to call the new pod. But it should be the same exact feed. You shouldn't lose access to anything. So hopefully it'll be a very minimal transition. But I promised you guys an update. And that's the first update there. The second update for our patrons, patreon.com/Falcoholic by the way, is that we're going to have our next Q&A session Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. So for patrons, make sure to write that down. I'll be posting on the Patreon tonight to remind folks about that. So get your Patreon questions for that Q&A session ready. And if you're not a patron yet, you got almost a week to get set up if you want to take part in that event. So that's all. That's all the plugging I'll do before we jump into the takes. So we do have a Falcons defense here in significant need of talent everywhere. We'll start with the cornerback position, which I don't think is as dire as many on the defense. In fact, I'd say it's probably the closest as currently constructed to being decent to good. And they do have a lot of guys currently under contract. Obviously, AJ Terrell is a very good starter. Late in the season was playing like his 2021 season, looking like an elite cornerback one. And I think we can probably depend on him to play at or near that level. So that's great. We didn't get to see a lot of Casey Hayward, which is unfortunate. He was playing pretty solid before he got hurt, but he will be, I believe, 34 this year, and the Falcons would save $5 million by cutting him. So it seems like that may happen. Who knows? And then behind those guys, they had Darren Hall, who did fill in pretty admirably when asked. I believe they can re-sign D. Alford as an exclusive rights free agent, which basically means he comes back at the vet minimum. So it seems likely that they'll do that. And then they have a number of sort of like futures contract guys in the mix as well. So certainly room for improvement, for adding more players to that rotation. They do have several free agents at the position as well, most notably Isaiah Oliver. And I think, some special teams guys like Michael Ford, Rashad Fenton, that trade didn't really pan out. So they do have some significant needs at corner to fill out the rest of the depth chart. And this is an interesting free agent class as well. I know, Allen, you have a list of guys that you might be interested in. Adnan, I know you might have some guys as well. So I'm not going to steal all the thunder. I'll let you guys go first, and I'll just sort of fill in the gaps if there are any in our coverage. But Allen, as the special guest this evening, I'll give you the first shot. Who's a name or two guys that you're interested in the Falcons pursuing in this free agent class?
The players I'm interested in, I don't think are going to fit Ryan Nielsen's schematic vision, because I'm going based off what we saw in New Orleans. And I just know New Orleans primarily had a lot of big body corners that like to get physical at the line of scrimmage, jam them up, play man. Like, I love Byron Murphy in Arizona. I think he's like one of their 4 good defensive players, but he's pretty undersized. I love Jonathan Jones from Patriots. I think he's been a solid contributor there. But both are about 5'9", 5'10", and I don't know if they're necessarily going to fit Ryan Nielsen's scheme. Now, granted, look, Ryan Nielsen has only had 1 year as defensive coordinator, so I don't want to put too much of I don't want to just make these assumptions that he just wants strictly big corners. But I am just wondering, are they going to go there? Because I think the Falcons already have some smaller corners on the roster. Like, to me, I think they would kind of want to get 6'1", 6'2", get with some more of those rangy corners. So, yeah, that kind of leaves the options limited, because obviously no Patrick Peterson. I think Jamel Dean is out of the price range. So I don't know. I'm not really feeling this class as a whole. But if they want to take a risk on 2 guys I like, though, I'd say Byron Murphy, even though he's more effective in the slot, would be great. And then Jonathan Jones, I think he's been one of the more underappreciated corners in the league over the past 3 years or so. I would be surprised if Belichick doesn't re-sign him.
Right, because I feel like, wasn't he on like the Texans or something? And it just like, it didn't seem like he was getting, I can't remember where Jonathan Jones was before New England last, but
that's a good question, because he's been in the league for a while. Like, he's 29, which
maybe he's been with the Patriots, I guess, his entire career. But I think it's maybe only been recently that he has taken on like a large role over the last few seasons. Yeah.
They moved him from slot to outside corner, and he just had a career year. Like, that's 11 pounds pickups, 4 picks, 3 forced fumbles. And, I mean, he does have the versatility to play some slot corner as well, which gives him some, some added value. But, yeah, it's the height and weight really isn't there as much. But, he was super productive last year. And it was a hell of a year to be super productive, because he'll cash out on that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, those are all good names, and we'll definitely, I think, come back and talk about some of those guys more in depth. But Adnan, did you have any names you wanted to throw into the mix there as well?
I mean, if we're just going to do our due diligence on the biggest names, the biggest name in this free agent class, whom I do not think the Falcons will be pursuing, is Jonathan Bradbury from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think I don't think the Falcons are looking to invest a super large sum of money into the cornerback position this offseason. I think this is a position where in the future the team will need to address the cornerback 2 position, but just the presence of Casey Hayward, I think he's that perfect bridge guy for not just last year but for this year as well. It's one of those situations where you can hold on to Hayward and then maybe spend some of those resources that you have next offseason to fill in the gaps at cornerback, while this offseason you fill in the gaps at safety and in the trenches, which is, I think, what's more of a pressing need for this team than cornerback. So I think that they'll hold on to Hayward. I'd like to see them hold on to Hayward. But, you have Bradbury, you have Cam Sutton, who has been super consistent and super good in Pittsburgh. Jamel Dean was mentioned. I think that these are the big three, so to speak, in this free agent class. I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons aren't really linked with any of them. At the end of the day, I wouldn't mind someone like a Jonathan Jones just because of the versatility, depending on the price range. But I think the Falcons will be a bit more quiet when it comes to this position specifically. Keep Hayward. I'd like to see them re-sign Oliver. I think Isaiah Oliver was really showing some stuff before his injury, and then I don't think it's super fair to completely judge him based off last year coming off of the injury. So, he's someone that you have some continuity with. Other names are guys like Rocky Yassin, who was linked to the Falcons in the draft process in the second round a few years ago. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons ran it back, so to speak, with the big names, and then maybe take some cornerback depth maybe on day 3 of the draft.
Yeah, I'm curious what they end up doing, because I think we know that they do need somebody else. And if they keep Hayward, then it's more or less settled. And that's what I sort of said in my cap space article, was that, look, if they need the space, Hayward's probably the guy, other than, of course, Marcus Mariota, who's sort of the obvious one. Like, Hayward is the only other player that really clears any significant space. But it's like, do they really need it? Like, I know right now everyone's like salivating over the prospect of adding all these players, and we're going to have all these guys lined up, and who are we going to sign? But like, free agency rarely works that way. Like, you have to fight tooth and nail to get these guys to sign with you, particularly when you're not a playoff team. And I don't think the Falcons are like awful. Like, they're going to have to like bend over backwards to get free agents here. But this is not, the Chiefs. This is not the Eagles. This is not a premier destination right now. Maybe it will be in the future, but you're not necessarily going to be able to get all the guys you want. And honestly, like is it the Giants? Who has the most cap space? The Bears. Like, the Bears have like $100 million in space. They're not going to be able to spend it. They're not going to be able to spend that money. I know everyone's like, oh, it'd be great to have all this money. You can't. They won't be able to spend it. And this happened to the Jaguars for years and years. Like, they literally couldn't get enough top free agents there to spend down all that cash. And that's not the worst thing in the world.
Prices out there.
Yeah.
Like, right. They started super overpaying guys.
Yeah, exactly, because they could.
Yeah. Like 20 or 18 million a year for Christian Kirk. Kirk was really good last year.
To be fair, he actually earned that contract for sure. So I don't want to slander the man too much, but yeah, at the time it looked like a super overpay. So it's like, the Falcons have plenty of money to get all the guys they want. At the same time, they're probably going to take a measured approach and not try to necessarily maximize every dollar. So we'll see. But I do tend to agree with you guys that like this is a spot where they're probably not going to spend premium cash. And I wouldn't be upset with them just holding on to Hayward as like, and Hayward also offers inside versatility too, right? So as the veteran in the room, as the guy that can play on the inside or the outside, I don't hate it. And I think he was playing fine before he got hurt. But, and Darren Hall was also okay. They do need more there, but it's not the biggest need, certainly. But, I mean, in this class, you guys mentioned a lot of the best names, right? Like James Bradbury. If they're going to go splurge on someone, it would be Bradbury. Bradbury has good size. He's going to be just turning 30 in 2023. So he's definitely got some good years left. But he's probably going to be like a $15 million a year corner, like at least. So that's going to be extremely expensive. You mentioned Cam Sutton, again, going to be a really expensive signing. And then Jonathan Jones, I just have a hard time seeing him leave New England. And there's a lot of sort of mid-level guys, right? So like, I think guys like, Sean Murphy Bunting had a better year with the Bucs this year as more of like a depth player. Isaiah Oliver coming back makes a lot of sense. I know Emmanuel Mosley for the 49ers was playing great before he got hurt.
Ooh, that would be interesting. I forgot about him.
Yeah,
it was only about 7 games, but he was playing well, very well.
He was awesome. Yeah, so it's like I do wonder if like he just comes back to the 49ers on like a 1-year deal to try to rehab his value, or if somebody could lure him away. But so there's some guys out there, but it's not the most like star-studded class, and I know there's guys like Greedy Williams, but it's like, what do you really, so as kind of like a buy low guy that maybe you could find something out of. But for me, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes down kind of like what you were suggesting, Adnan, that it's like maybe you just keep Hayward, you bring back Isaiah Oliver and Mike Ford, and then maybe you end up adding like a mid-tier guy to sort of fill out the depth chart. Maybe you draft someone in the first couple rounds to sort of fill it out, and you're probably fine with that.
It's not sexy. It's not what people want to hear, but it's like, it would be frugal, and I don't think it would be the worst move to, throw your resources to other positions for this season, and then in the future you address cornerback a bit more heavily.
Yeah. So, we'll see how that ends up actually panning out. I do wonder if this is a spot where the draft is a bigger focus. And we'll continue to talk about that after the combine as we shift these shows to more of like a draft focus. But it's, there's certainly some names like you mentioned, Rock Yassin too, who I think is definitely a guy that I don't think is going to break the bank, but has improved sort of every year, and is intriguing. Maybe they go after Byron Murphy to be more of like a, Murphy has played some on the outside too, but I think his best ball has generally been in the slot. So it's like maybe you just sign him to have an elite slot corner. That's, I think, an underrated part of defenses, right? But we'll see. And then Jamel Dean, is another name that you guys mentioned, and Marcus Peters is out there. But like some of these guys are going to get re-signed by their teams too.
I was waiting for someone to mention Marcus Peters. It's not happening in Atlanta, but I do find it fun that he's a free agent. I don't know where he could go, but
I think it is derailed by injuries.
Entertainment purposes, love Marcus Peters. Being on if I was a coach and he was on my team, he would make me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah. And like speaking of slot guys, like Bryce Callahan from the Chargers, one of the best slot corners in the league. He could potentially be someone. Yeah, he is. But so not all these guys are going to break the bank, and I think it could be interesting. But I do wonder. At first, I thought this was a position where they really might run it back if they had Dean Pease. But with Dean Pease gone, I don't know if Ryan Nielsen is going to want the same type of guys or not. So that's what kind of gives me pause with predicting this group.
His interviews are very vague. I appreciate the passion, but it was hard to dissect what he is really going to run. So I'm just basing it off his New Orleans defenses. But I do wonder if their free agency activity at the position is going to hinge on Isaiah Oliver. Isaiah Oliver goes elsewhere, you see them taking more of a proactive approach to get a slot corner, because we all know how valuable slot corners are in today's modern game.
Yeah, and it's I think we all like D. Alford too, and I was surprised he didn't get more opportunities. But again, small corner. And I don't think his size really showed up and impacted his play as much as I thought it would, particularly as a run defender. But maybe that was just because everybody else on the Falcons defense sucked at tackling. So D. Alford just being fine at tackling was just fine in general. But it was a weird year for that secondary to be sure. But yeah, I tend to agree with you guys that this is probably not where we see a big splash signing, but we could see several smaller ones. And it could be that they bring the guys back, or it could be that they go in a completely different direction because this is a new defensive coordinator coming in and he might prefer his guys. But the other side is Jerry Gray also, right? He's a completely new secondary coach too. So it's not just Nielsen, it's also Jerry Gray. So it could be completely different what they want. I tend to prefer the scheme that, Dennis Allen runs with the Saints as opposed to the more, zone heavy scheme favored by Dean Pease. So I'm excited to potentially see some more man coverage and things like that. But they might need different personnel to run that. I tend to think AJ Terrell is actually a pretty good man coverage corner, so I'm not upset about that at all. But, you know, it's going to be a transition for the secondary this year, no matter what, to playing this new defense. And I just wonder how it goes. It's exciting. It's one of the more interesting groups, I think, to monitor, even if it's not going to have like a giant free agent addition. But on the topic of this group, just because we're here, we're not going to linger on the draft too much because we got to save some of that sweet, sweet draft content for the March period. But, you know, cornerback at 8 has started to get a little bit more trendy. You know, I did it for my last mock. Allen, I'll, you know, sort of kick this to you first. Like, what do you think about that option, considering that by the time the Falcons get on the clock at 8, they could see 2, maybe 3 edge guys go, and maybe the top corner is still there?
Oof. I think it all depends on free agency because that is look, I'm all for finding the best talent. Like, obviously, you gotta gauge like positional need and talent. Like, you're just not gonna draft the position because you need it. The last thing you want to do is reach. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I don't know, 8th overall pick for a corner. That's a bit bold. But you know, depending on what caliber of talent's there, you know, I could see you making the case for it. But at the same time, you know, let's see, like Oliver and Hayward, those are like the 2 players that we really have to monitor to see what happens, because I think that's going to change the trajectory of, you know, how the coaching staff views the position.
Yeah, and no, that's a good point. Adnan, did you have a take on cornerback at 8 as well?
I'm not there yet. Like, yeah, I think if the edge guys are more so taken in the top 7, I would lean more so toward an offensive lineman at that point. I would just prioritize the trenches right now. I think that needs a bit more attention, even though the team was really, you know, strong. The offensive line unit collectively last season was very strong by the stats and by the PFF grades. A lot of that was helped by the fact that the team ran the ball more than any other team in the league, and run blocking is more of a strength to some of these offensive linemen that are on the roster today, but they're not really quite there yet with pass blocking, not all of them. So I would definitely lean toward an O lineman at 8 in that case.
Yeah.
See, people get excited about 2 potential all-pro corners. Man, I'm not with you. Give me 2 potential all-pro guards, just mauling folks.
Hey,
yes.
I'm telling you, like, you know, maybe we don't need to splurge on that new Rolex watch. You know, maybe we should just pay off the light bill instead.
Maybe. I mean, you're talking to Team Creed Humphrey and Team Elijah Vera Tucker at 8 last year. Okay, so you don't have to convince me of you know, the big nasties in the middle. So yeah,
so we could have had Creed Humphrey in the second a couple of years ago. But...
That's you know, we have it on good authority that we weren't the only ones that wanted that to happen. So
yeah. It's not the most exciting. It's never super exciting when I talk up the offensive linemen, but God, football is still won in the trenches. Like. I'm still super excited to see the big men just beast up front.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the cornerback room. I agree. And then, like, you know, Cornell Armstrong is another guy too. That's a free agent.
You know, he can go.
You know, clearly, and that's another guy that I think, like, if the current staff was here, I'd just like pencil him in as coming back, right? But like with the new staff, probably not. And, you know, that's probably wise also. But
just watch film, Ryan Nielsen. Just please watch the film. particularly the home game with the Panthers.
Yeah.
Watch that Bengals game. It's all you need to see.
That's probably the toughest matchup he could possibly draw also, but you know.
But even the Chargers game, like, Kevin, I remember we did a podcast, like, Josh Perkins. Wait, was his name Josh Perkins?
The
Chargers
receiver, because they had no healthy receiver. Yeah, they had no healthy receivers. Yeah,
but is that his name? Oh, Joshua Palmer. There we go.
Yeah, Josh Palmer ate him for lunch.
Yeah, like Joshua Palmer is taking to him. Josh Palmer is like the most median average receiver. Like when you think of a Ranger receiver, like Josh Palmer is just like the standard.
Yeah.
He's
like the average guy. Yeah, he cooked him. Yeah, Cornell Armstrong, to his credit. From like UDFA to starting, he was not as bad as I thought he could have been. But that's about the most ringing endorsement that I could give of Cornell Armstrong. But again, UDFA forced into CB2, you know?
Yeah, that's tough.
He didn't he didn't embarrass himself every game. There were a few games in there. I want to give the man his credit. There were a few games in there that he held the fort down at a decent level. But the rest of the games, you bury the tape for those ones. So, Cornell Armstrong, best of luck to you, brother. So we got a couple tips I want to get to here before I get them lost. The first one's for Allen from Jason Gaines. He said, Allen, did you help your former classmate Dean Marlowe pack his bags to get to Buffalo?
No, I did not. Fun fact about Dean Marlowe, I covered the Jets Falcons game in preseason, and the good man Matt Haley, we were trying to sub the interview, and like Dean Marlowe was one of the first people on the team playing back, so I did not get the interview. So I don't think, even though we were in class together, I do not think we were buddies.
Those strings didn't get pulled, huh?
Yeah. No, and Matt wanted to make it happen too, because I told him, like, my sophomore year of high school, we had Spanish class together. We would talk about, this is back in like 09, 10, and talk about Favre and Sidney Rice. Sorry about bringing up Brett Favre, not a good name. I'm just thinking, like, back in 09, 2010, like, hey man, we're talking about football, and like I was like, wow, it'd be crazy to reunite with him, and yeah, it did not happen. So no, I did not help him, but credit to him. Yeah. He had a nice interception in that playoff game. I know that ended badly against the Bengals, but he still had it.
He got that one splash play. So
he was solid for Buffalo after the trade, but
he clearly like fit that defense. Like they knew exactly how to use him. It seemed like so. It
helps going to the Bills' defense too. Their front seven's a lot better than Atlanta's. But God, that blown coverage against DJ.
My God. Yeah.
God, no words.
No words. Yeah, so we'll gloss over the rest of that, but best of luck to Dean. At least he got to go to the playoffs, and we got a 7th out of it, so it's not the worst thing in the world. A 7th for a guy that wasn't even really playing much for us. So Jason Gaines again with the $2. Thank you again, Jason. He says, PFF has the best mock draft simulator. It's very realistic. Well, if you agree with PFF's ratings, then it's definitely realistic. If you don't, it's not realistic. But I agree that theirs is probably the nicest looking that's available right now, to be fair. He says each mock is different. You can draft all 7 rounds. Yes, I mean, to be fair, like PFF's mock draft simulator is absolutely fine. I don't hate it, but I'm spoiled because I have early access to the Draft Network's machine, which is just, I feel like, far superior, but it's not publicly available yet, so I can't really blame anyone for using a different product. But I would encourage you when it does come out, and it's going to come out, I believe, this month, before the end of the month, to check out TDNs as well, because it's not just based on PFF's grades, which, as we all know, some are pretty legit, and some are just really weird, and they have some guys going way late because they just have a weird vendetta against them for some reason. They have some guys going extremely early. So, whatever. He says also, what are you guys' thoughts on Georgia tight end Darnell Washington? He's usually available for the Falcons on day 2. Yeah, I tweeted about this yesterday, actually. But so you guys might remember my thoughts on it. But yeah, what do you guys think about Darnell Washington, the quasi-offensive lineman / athletic monster at tight end? Day two pick. I mean, I figure people will hate a tight end coming to Atlanta at any point just because it's not a defensive lineman.
It would help fill our Georgia quota for sure.
Yeah.
Grab him and then grab Stetson Bennett later on. So, that's 2 right there. But I mean, I wouldn't see how you can't rule it out with Arthur Smith. You need 2 tight ends in his offense. He prefers 2 receiving tight ends. That's what he does. This isn't the traditional, old school offense where you're you have Kyle Pitts and then, the rest, everyone else blocks. Kyle Pitts was a blocker himself last season, if you remember correctly. But, go Dogs. I don't foresee the Falcons taking a tight end in the 2nd round. Not this early after the Pitts selection a couple of years ago, where they spent a premium pick on a tight end.
Yeah, yep, very fair. Alan, you got any Darnell Washington takes at this point in the offseason?
Give me a month. Sorry, folks.
Okay. It's okay.
Exactly. So believe in Adnan and believe in Kevin. And as for the Georgia quota, look, we've had this debate for over a decade. People, you just gotta accept when Georgia players do not come to land. But didn't 2 get drafted last year? So
yes,
they should be satisfied.
Exactly. They're beginning the quota. They're starting the quota, and not a moment too soon, because this team could use some champions on the roster. This team doesn't take
national champions.
This team has never won any championships, so I don't think that's a coincidence. Let's get some of that championship pedigree down here into Atlanta.
All I'm gonna say is Mike Mayock had that mentality, and it didn't end well for him.
Yeah, poor guy. Cleveland Farrell. That was brutal. Now, to be fair, everyone would have told him not to do that, but
I would never take Cleveland Farrell in the top 5.
That was pretty bold. Yeah. And like it was just man, we're not gonna get sidetracked on that, but man, that was such I remember that on the live show. I was just like, what the hell?
Also, I do want to say though, I came across a Twitter account the other day where the guy keeps posting like old school Mel Kiper analysis stuff from the early 2000s. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's been on Twitter where it's
I've seen it, yeah.
Just random players like Roddy White, Chad Johnson, all the guys where it's Mel Kiper then gives his analysis. Bro, Mel Kiper was really good at this shit.
Yes, he was. He was Mel Kiper, he was legit the best for quite a while. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I think he might just be at the point where he's just more of a celebrity and just doesn't necessarily want to grind it as much anymore, and I think he's earned that. But Mel Kiper deserves all the props in the world because he started the whole mock drafting, draft coverage industry. He is the father of it. So
all of these guys were spot on. It's whatever he said. It's damn, this dude knew this in 2001, and it's just it was just very impressive.
Oh yeah, no, the man knows ball. I don't know what's happened recently. But I don't know if ESPN's just start saying outlandish stuff, Mel, or if he's just I'm just gonna vibe. I'm gonna scout off vibes, and that's fine. He's earned it because he laid the groundwork for this entire industry, the whole draft coverage industry. So can't say anything bad about Mel. He's earned his reprieve from my criticism. But in the effort of playing devil's advocate, I actually do think Darnell Washington is a legit possibility in the second round, as much as some people may dislike it. And the reason for that is I think that the Falcons starting at 44, 45, depending on if you count the Dolphins pick as a pick or if you just skip over it. The Falcons use 12 personnel and 13 personnel more than any other team in the NFL. For reference, both Parker Hesse and Michael Pruitt played more snaps than the Falcons' third receiver, to get an idea of how often the Falcons utilize multiple tight ends. So the second tight end for the Falcons is basically going to play more than the wide receiver 3 and probably as much as the wide receiver 2. So taking Darnell Washington in Atlanta's offense, even if he's the tight end 2, he's going to play a ton, 600 snaps. So he's going to get a lot more play time than any other tight end 2 in the NFL probably would. And we all know, for those that follow Darnell Washington, he's an amazing blocker. He is. I mean, he's probably the best blocking tight end in college football. He's 275 pounds. He's almost an offensive lineman, but he just moves just so well. I mean, he's a special talent there. And we know this team is obsessed with that type of player. They just are. Look at Troy Anderson, I mean.
In fairness, Kevin, would it really be smart to go offense in the second round after this team takes Bijan with 8?
I mean, just go all in. Go all in on offense, right?
Oh, man.
That would be so fun, though.
God, they would just be screw everyone else and what you think. We're just going to take Bijan and Darnell Washington, and then Desmond Ridder will be a top 10 quarterback, and then it's just we're cooking with gas.
Yeah,
so
I don't know if you guys ever watched the Game of Zones, videos from Bleacher Report for the NBA before, but it was they had a spoof where Mike D'Antoni comes and meets James Harden with Houston. And he's like, oh, yeah, but what about the defense? And he's like, the what? He's like, no, my philosophy is no defense and twice the offense. So that would pretty much be the philosophy right there.
Yeah, exactly. Who needs defense when you score every drive, right? Just keep the opponent off the field with your run game. It didn't work so bad for the Falcons this year. But yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, I think Darnell Washington makes a ton of sense. Maybe more sense than for any other team. Darnell Washington makes sense for the Falcons. So for that reason alone, I think there's a decent chance he ends up in Atlanta. But in terms of positional need, it's not really a need, but we know the Falcons love crazy athletes. We know they love high ceiling players, particularly early in the draft. Look, it's possible. And Darnell Washington, much more that traditional tight end. Maybe that spurs the Falcons to just sort of move Kyle Pitts more full-time to wide receiver. And then he becomes the wide receiver 1 and Drake London is the wide receiver 1. It's sort of like a 1-2 split. Those two guys are your outside guys. And then Darnell Washington is your tight end. And then you have Michael Pruitt. Like, the Falcons could easily do that. And to me, it's like, I wouldn't look at it so cut and dry as like they need to take another wide receiver. It's like they need to get another significant receiving threat. And maybe the best one is Darnell Washington. Like, maybe legitimately you get to that 44 pick. And by the time, you get there, the top receivers at that spot are sort of gone, right? And Darnell Washington isn't gone. So maybe he's the best guy there, then he fits and helps your run game and all this stuff, whatever. So that's my devil's advocate, rant on Darnell Washington. And we'll continue on with the free agency preview, because we got sidetracked with the draft quite a bit there. It's so easy to go down the rabbit hole of draft takes, but the next position, probably the one fans really care about the most, right? Safety. We mentioned it off the top of the show. Top safety free agent Jesse Bates dining out with the who's who of the Falcons secondary, and of course,
wined and dined.
Yes,
wined and dined in just February.
I'm surprised Cordarrelle Patterson wasn't there. Yeah,
I guarantee you, AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward were having words with him about.
So like, to be fair, like I do think. There's a decent chance that happens. We've been talking about it all offseason. It's a big need that the Falcons don't really have like a premier safety talent right now. So it is something to consider, and the safety depth chart as a whole for Atlanta is, a little bit lacking, right? I mean, they do have Richie Grant, who has sort of, been decent to good depending on the day. They have Jalen Hawkins, who's also been decent to good depending on the day, but like there hasn't really been a lot of impact play there, not as much as you would hope from Grant, certainly. And the depth, is not really there either. So I could definitely see this being a spot where they look to invest. But yeah, I mean, Adnan, I'll give you the first crack at this one. Obviously, we're interested in Jesse Bates. You can give your full-throated endorsement of that, but there's a lot of other safeties out there. This is a pretty good free agent safety class.
Yep. So just to be completely forthright with you guys and completely direct, this is about to be just the start of this is going to be a Jesse Bates monologue, where yes, I think that this Jesse Bates is number one on my entire list of free agents for the Falcons, regardless of position, just because this would be the type of game-changing addition to the secondary that can change the fortunes of an entire defense. And this would, I think, as much as I love Cordarrelle Patterson, this would be the highest impact free agent signing for the Falcons since Alex Mack in 2016, I think, without a doubt. Now, the thing about Jesse Bates is he's 26 years old this season. This will be his age 26 year, and whatever contract you give him, that will run through the entirety of his prime. Players like this, at this level, Jesse Bates is a former second-team All-Pro in 2020. He was the highest-graded safety by PFF, and since then he hasn't been as good as 2020, but he's still been very, very good, and he's been a very key contributor for a very good Bengals defense the last couple of years. Players like this normally aren't allowed to hit the market, not at this age. And you see the top safeties that are available outside of Bates, and those are Jordan Poyer and CJ Gardner-Johnson in Buffalo and in Philadelphia. Neither of those guys will be allowed to hit the market. I think it's already been reported that Gardner-Johnson, if he does not agree to an extension, he'll be franchise tagged by the Eagles. And Poyer, the Bills will need to move some money around, but Poyer is so important to that Bills defense. And you can see it based off the win-loss record for them with Poyer and without Poyer the last couple seasons. Like, the only player who's been more important has been Josh Allen to that team. I do not think that they're letting Hoyer go. But the reason why Bates, I think, will be like he could still get tagged by the Bengals, but Bates was franchise tagged by the Bengals last offseason. And he was one of the 8 players in the NFL who were franchise tagged. And last offseason, he made $12.9 million. Let me do some math for you guys. So this year, the franchise tag number for safeties will be $14.46 million. That won't be the franchise tag number for Jesse Bates. If they tag Bates again, his number will be $15.4 million, $15.49, so $15.5 million. And the reason for that is because he was one of the 5 highest salaried safeties, and because he was tagged last offseason, he gets a 20% raise this offseason instead of just giving him the regular salary cap number. So I don't think that he's in their plans to be given an extension, and the reason for that is because you have Joe Burrow, who could very likely make $200 million guaranteed on his next contract, and you have Jamar Chase, who will make at least $80 million guaranteed on his next contract. So I don't think that they're looking to invest in Bates long term. So this will be at most a 1-year contract, a 1-year investment. And if they decide to tag him again after next offseason, his money will be, he'll make over $22 million in cap hit, because the third time getting tagged, it's a 44% raise. So you'll essentially have to live with a $15.9 million cap hit for a safety this year, and just this year, because they're not giving him the extension. And they already drafted a first-round safety, Daxton Hill, last offseason. So for all these reasons, I think Jesse Bates will be allowed to hit the open market at age 26. I think it's a no-brainer. I would love the Falcons to put on a full court press for him. Get guys recruiting. I think it's already started, actually. But beyond Bates, you have guys like Von Bell, who also just now came from the Cincinnati Bengals. His contract expired with the Bengals. He's someone that Nielsen has a history with in in New Orleans, and he's someone that Fontenot helped draft in New Orleans. I think Fontenot was there when Bell was drafted by the Saints. So that would make sense. Adrian Amos from Green Bay as well. But, Jesse Bates is at the top of my list, and I'll actually feel very, very sad if the Falcons don't end up with this signing. So that's my monologue.
Yeah, it definitely it seems like sort of like all of the breeze is blowing that way. So I'm interested to see if it actually ends up happening. But there definitely seems to be a lot of positive momentum for that signing to happen. And it really hasn't, the needle hasn't moved for me a ton, even with the defensive, scheme change, because Jesse Bates is really a safety that you can do whatever you want with. I mean, he's a great single high safety, but like he can definitely play in the box. Like he has no issues whatsoever with that. So definitely somebody I like. But yeah, Alan, do you want to wax poetic about Jesse Bates too? You got any other guys you like?
Yeah, I'm firmly with Adnan when it comes to Jesse Bates. I've been thrilled with watching him play for like the last 3 years. Even that 2020 season when the Bengals were unwatchable once Burrow went down. I remember that Monday night game against Pittsburgh. He was just flying all across the field. And he just has that range and just those instincts that you want to see from a deep line safety. And I think, as well as Richie Grant played at times in coverage, I thought he was better either in the box or like in the intermediate areas. We saw when it came to deep throws, particularly against Cincinnati and New Orleans, he was responsible for a few big plays downfield, and he didn't seem to have the comfortability to cover downfield. So I think the Falcons should prioritize signing someone that can play in a single high while allowing Grant to play more inside the box. Now, Grant, look, a lot of teams play too high now, so Grant's going to have to play, downfield, just going to have to improve. But I do think the Falcons definitely need to prioritize signing a true cover safety. So that's where Bates comes in. And look, I know there's times where maybe he struggled tackling-wise, but I think you live with that just knowing what he brings coverage-wise. Like, if you remember that AFC Championship game against the Chiefs from the previous season where they won, he had that pass breakup that caused the interception that essentially got the Bengals to the Super Bowl. And it was just one of those phenomenal safety plays that you see the real high-end safeties make, like Prime Earl Thomas, for example. So, yeah, I'm all in on just Bates. I think they have to make that happen as best they can. And, for any naysayers saying, oh, do you really want them to spend money on a safety? It's like, look, safety safety I know is an underappreciated position, but it brings so much value, kind of like three-down linebackers. Like if you see a premier three-down linebacker and you really need it, or if you see a premier safety and you really need it, go for it. Like I don't like when people just say, do you really want to spend money on this type of position? Look, if you really need it, which the Falcons clearly do, and a talent like this is available, go for it. So, because I've been seeing some of those tweets, I'm just like, dang, you got to watch him play.
Nobody wants anyone, man. Like everyone's too expensive. Like if you look at Twitter, there's going to be a group of people that's like, oh no, this guy's like too much. This guy's too much. I don't want him. Who do you want then? Like this fan base simultaneously wants everyone and doesn't want anyone. But just to piggyback off of that point, this team, don't look at it as, oh, are we really going to spend this much for a safety? We're spending this much for a playmaker. Like this team needs playmakers everywhere, like on all three levels of the defense. I think he would pretty much complete the secondary. I still have high hopes for Richie Grant. I think he'll make Richie Grant's life easier. I think he'll make AJ Terrell's life easier. Grant last year was pretty much his de facto rookie season. And, we've seen the type of playmaker he's been at UCF. And, well, we know that the potential is there. Jalen Hawkins, no offense to him, but I don't think Jalen Hawkins is a starting safety on a playoff caliber team. I think Hawkins is really good depth. I'm really, really happy to have Hawkins on this team. And I think that was a great day 3 selection that the Falcons made, but I wouldn't be super comfortable going into week 1 with Hawkins lined up in a starting spot. Like this team, when's the last time this team really had that type of a playmaker at the safety position? Like maybe 2012 Thomas Deku when he was getting all those interceptions is my guess.
I don't want to say the name, but you are right. Yeah, I know people in the chat are just going to shake their head at the mention of Thomas Deku. But there was a time of Thomas Deku was just a playmaker.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Deku, after that, he kind of fell off and he was very small. But 2012 Deku was he was a Pro Bowler for a reason.
Yeah.
He was getting all the picks.
He was crotch chopping everybody, man.
Those were the good old days with Thomas Deku. And then the next year, we don't talk about that. We just gloss over that. But, I mean...
Let's not talk about his tackling either.
Yeah, no, we don't talk about that. But if you're good enough in coverage, you can live with some missed tackles. But, if you suck at both, then we have a big problem. And that's what happened, unfortunately, the next year. And
by the way, Nico in the chat, I would absolutely not pay Daniel Jones $45 million. Like, that is... Anyone who does that's going to be hilarious. Like, Daniel Jones, I do not think is a good quarterback.
No.
Personally,
I think he's just okay, dog. It's like how much better? Like Daniel Jones was like a tick better than Marcus Mariota.
Average on his best day.
No, Daniel Jones is better than Marcus Mariota, but
Yeah, the Giants are going to talk themselves into giving him a massive contract, and that's going to be very funny, especially if it costs them Saquon, because Saquon was the reason for their success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody said, "Oh, why don't the Falcons just pay Saquon instead of drafting Bijan?" So you want to pay a running back instead of drafting one? Gotcha. Like that makes it better somehow. Giving giant money to an injury-prone running back, who I love, by the way. Like Saquon's awesome, but like that's not better. Like if you're against drafting Bijan at 8, you should be against paying Saquon $12 million or whatever it is he's gonna get. Like you can't be for one and not for the other. Like that doesn't make any sense. So
I just appreciate Tyler Algier. Like folks, like there were like 5 biggest highlights of the Falcons season last year. Tyler Algier was definitely one of them.
And also as much as I love Saquon, and as much as I think that Saquon, when healthy, is a top 3 running back in the NFL, I don't think it's a best practice to pay any running back. Honestly,
it's really not.
Like maybe there's like tiny exceptions. Derrick Henry in Tennessee, like Derrick Henry carries that offense single-handedly, more or less. Like sure, like pay him because he's that important. But you saw that graphic, it always surfaces of the leading rusher of the Super Bowl champion and how much money he made that season. And it's always like $1 million, like on average. Like running backs have their value, their most value in their rookie contracts. And then normally teams, for the most part, normally regret paying running backs. Like should the Falcons regretted paying Devontae Freeman. Like what we saw firsthand.
Yeah, it happens. It's sad, but it definitely happens. But on the safety topic, you guys covered several of the best names. I think Jesse Bates, obviously the top target, obviously the one that I personally would pursue with the most, fervor, I guess is a good word for it. But Von Bell, really, we shouldn't necessarily even like both Von Bell and Jesse Bates, because Von Bell has the Fontenot and the Nielsen connection.
That one makes the most sense, from connection standpoint.
Yeah, so like I wouldn't rule that out either. And we know that the Saints liked to play a safety as their slot defender. So like maybe Richie Grant becomes that player in this defense. With Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the Saints love to play Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as their slot defender. So can Richie Grant do it? I don't know. Can Bates or Von Bell do it? I don't know. Maybe that's something else to consider, but I wouldn't rule out Von Bell at all. Adrian Amos is another one with the Jerry Gray connection. He had a bit of a down year this year, but he's just going to be 30, and like Amos has been a really good safety for like the previous 3 years before this year. Amos was awesome. So I would not rule out Amos at all. If they strike out on Jesse Bates, Amos could be another great option. Taylor Rapp of the Rams is going to be another top name. Julian Love of the Giants had a great year. He's a free agent. And you go on down the list, and there's plenty of guys that could be decent depth as well, right? Like Nasir Adderley of the Chargers, I think, is a good buy low potential safety who didn't really live up to his draft stock, but certainly interesting. LaMarcus Joyner, great blitzer. Terrell Edmonds.
Jimmy Ward.
Jimmy Ward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like there's definitely a lot of good safeties out there. And I think you get one of these guys in here to bolster the unit, and then maybe draft someone on day 3 also. And I think you're looking at a much better overall safety room when the dust clears. Because I don't think they're that far off. I think it's just like Jalen Hawkins and Richie Grant, neither one is really a guy you want playing single high. And I think when those guys were put into that role, they kind of got exposed because they just don't have the range for it. And Jesse Bates is the guy in that role. And I would say that's his best role. So if we're not doing the Dean Pease, we need all of our safeties to do everything. We can have some more specialized players like what the Saints did, with Marcus Williams. He was their deep guy, and then they would have another safety be more of their box guy. Let Jesse Bates be your single high and let Richie Grant roam the box, where I think he plays a lot better. And I think you're going to be a lot happier with that safety room. And Jesse Bates will give you that high-end coverage on the back that they were really missing. Like, it really made it so that they really couldn't depend on having that deep help on a lot of plays. And that, I think, really sort of left those young corners out to dry sometime. They hung them out to dry because that deep safety help really wasn't always there consistently when they needed it. So getting a guy like Jesse Bates to be an eraser in your secondary, that's going to help a lot. And I think it will help the overall defense way more than people realize. Look, safeties are starting to get paid. Like, it's starting to happen much more frequently. And it's underrated how important the safety is to the defense. I think teams are finally starting to come around on how important the position is, and they're starting to pay them more. And I think it's deserved. So
look at the Bills, how they built their success. Like Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. I think that was the best safety 10 in the past 2-3 seasons. I know Micah Hyde got injured this year, but the Bills, their foundation to me was built on that safety core. So let's not forget about the position. And you're bringing up the Saints defense before and how they utilize Marcus Williams. You can compare to Jesse Bates, but I'd be interested to see like Richie Grant, Malcolm Jenkins. I think there's some similarities there.
Yeah.
So I want to see Richie Grant blitz more. That was one thing I thought was disappointing last year. So I'm hoping Nielsen could unlock that, because I think Richie Grant going downhill, like, he has no problem taking on blockers. He's a pretty surefire tackler, and look, he's a tone setter. So let's utilize him like that rather than continuously have him go 20, 25 yards downfield.
Yeah, or like play him in cover 2 as a split safety, but like it just neither him or Jalen Hawkins are your cover 1 deep guy. And I think they had to do that sometimes because of what DMP's defense asks, and they like to rotate, and that has its own advantages, but they weren't the best options for that defense. I think they were hoping Grant would be able to unlock a little bit more range back there, but I think he's much more instinctual, closer to the line of scrimmage, and I think you just emphasize that by getting another guy in there that can take those responsibilities off his plate by being a great deep coverage safety. So
can I mention one more name that I think you mentioned? That I'm not sure if he's more, because he was moved around quite a bit on the defense, and some of this could be because Dallas's defense is so good, but Donovan Wilson popped a lot when I watched the Dallas defense this year, and he's a free agent. I don't know what his value is, but I think Donovan Wilson's someone to monitor. Like, he has long arms, and he's not afraid to hit. I don't know if he's more of a box safety than deep line safety, but if they want to take a chance on someone, it seemed like every time the Cowboys were on, and they obviously won a lot this year, Donovan Wilson would flash. So you just want to keep in mind. I like that you mentioned Julian Love too. I know he had an ugly showing against the Eagles where he literally missed 5 tackles in 3 quarters. But Julian Love was one of the bigger reasons why the Giants defense surpassed expectations. So I think that was a good call there. And I do want to emphasize that Jimmy Ward, even though he's more of a slot corner, he moved to safety on the request of D'Amico Ryans, and he flourished there. So but I'm all on Bates, but if things go wrong, I think the Falcons still should absolutely sign a veteran, and I think this is the time to do it. And it would hurt to see them miss out on Bates, but I think they're still in good hands with one of these players.
Yeah, there's some good veterans out there. LaMarcus Joyner, the Jets. I think Terrell Edmonds was mentioned with Pittsburgh. Devin McCourty, these guys. Yeah, it's a strong. I think the safety class is a bit stronger than the free agency class overall, at least up top. But yeah, I think if you really want the high impact, it's Bates, because again, Gardner Johnson would be spectacular. Saints connections there, 6 picks in 12 games last year. He went to another level, and I think the Saints should consider not trading with the Eagles anymore, because they got washed in both of those trades last offseason. For as good as Chris Olave is, he's not worth, what was it, 2 top 10 picks, or this year it's a top 10 pick, but and then Gardner Johnson they got for what was it, a day 3 pick?
Yeah.
And Gardner Johnson would just absolutely troll the Saints. The hate week would be taken to another level with him on the roster.
Oh yeah,
he was trolling.
I would have loved that. Yeah.
Hey, we'll welcome anything. If you're a talented player, all is forgiven. So.
No. If he signed with Atlanta, if he put the Falcons jersey on, we're over it. We're done. Those days are in the past. So yeah.
But Gardner Johnson is going to be an Eagle. The Eagles are not letting him go. They should not let him go. Poyer, the Bills are definitely not letting go. So I think it's Bates. And then there's a gap, and then it's Bell and the rest. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of signing both Bell and Bates too. That would be a very, very frisky move by the Falcons to make.
Yeah, no, good discussion there. Lots of names that we covered. And of course, we're just 3 weeks away from free agency officially starting. So we're getting there. You're not gonna have to wait too much longer to see where the top guys go, at least. And the Falcons for the first time actually have money, so it'll be much more exciting than usual. Yes. So
it'll be so fun. This offseason, I can't wait for this offseason. It'll be the most fun offseason since 2016. And even going into 2016, we didn't expect it to be that fun. That Alex Mack signing was not I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah.
And now the Falcons have the second most cap space, and it's gonna be a great spring. I can't wait. And you even have we didn't even mention Lamar Jackson tonight, but The connections
not
are
until
there.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not talking Lamar Jackson tonight, guys. We have to take a break from that every so often, but I'm sure we will talk about it again. So
we will promise that if that does happen, we will have an emergency
yes, of
show.
course. Of course. Sure. Yes. Yeah. No, we have an emergency show for any significant free agent signing, certainly. Anything over I mean, it'll be up to our discretion, but any like significant one, we'll probably just do it because why not, right?
Yeah. Is the level Allen Lazard?
I guess probably. I mean, it depends on how because it's like if we do here? Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to workshop that and figure that out.
Apparently, Allen Lazard wants $14 million a year. So,
well, in that case, I would have an emergency show to lambast the Falcons for that. So, but yeah,
is Aaron Rodgers coming to deal?
I can.
The darkness.
He wants to be a 1,000-yard receiver with Aaron Rodgers. Shit,
yep.
You think you're turning him into one?
Yeah.
But
hell of a blocker though. So.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm thinking he could come, but $14 million. Oh jeez.
Yeah.
He's not getting. There's no way he's getting that. I think that's his agent slipping that out there. Oh, you can have Lazard for $14 million. The phone is dry.
They're just waiting. They will call. People will wait for something good. So
I wouldn't count on Jim Irsay.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
It should, his agent is checking with his phone company to make sure that he paid his bill on time. Nobody's calling. But yeah, I can only imagine a Schefter bomb at 1 a.m. and then we get on here at 1 a.m. to 400 people who just want to listen to Lamar Jackson takes at that point, because I'm pretty sure at all hours of the day, I'm not saying that we will be on at all hours of the day, but how many people do you think would be watching if it was 2 a.m. and we were doing a show?
The European audience better be up.
Oh, they will be there. Yeah. If they announce it at 2 a.m., that's just terrible press. Also, they're not going to do that. They will announce that at 4 p.m. Like prime time, getting into the evening on a Wednesday or something.
I'm just so used to those NBA middle of the night drops. The Kevin Durant news dropped at 4 a.m. Eastern time, and I'm over here what are we doing, guys?
Yeah, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing? But appreciate all the takes. We did have one more donation from Corey. What's up, Corey? Thank you so much for the $5. He says, if we win the Super Bowl while you guys are doing the show, will there be a post game immediately following the game? Now, Corey, my hope is that I will be actually covering the Super Bowl in person. If that was the case, I'm hopeful by the time that happens, which hopefully will be next year, that I will be able to get credentials for that game. So in that case, it would probably be up to the the rules of the stadium. But maybe we could have somebody on deck to at least do something. But I mean, if we're watching it at home, then yeah, I'll probably come on just absolutely hammered, just yelling, and then we'll probably have a serious show the next day. But I'm sure we would have some kind of programming associated with the Super Bowl.
You gotta get those interviews, and people gotta wait.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, if I'm at the game, I'm going on the field. I'm gonna be down there, somewhere if I'm actually covering it. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean, if we're just watching from home, then we'll probably have some kind of show. Now, if the game sucks, then I'm not guaranteeing anything, except you'll just see a dark room, just empty with depression or something like that. It'd just be open mic or whatever. It'll be like that Clint Eastwood bit where he just had the empty chair on stage. That'll just be that'll be us. Yeah. That's a deep cut right there. That's a deep cut. But just empty chair. But yeah. Guys, we really appreciate everyone coming in, tuning in, and enjoying the free agency takes. Before we get out of here, I want to thank our guest Allen Strk at Allen Strk for coming on. Allen, anything that you're working on you'd like to let the people know about?
So right now, I just posted an article about Ryan Nielsen and just kind of getting to doing as best I can about his philosophy. I try to focus more towards defensive line because that's his specialty. So I talked about what he built in New Orleans and how it might connect with the Falcons and what they're doing. I will have a piece up about why I think signing a number 2 receiver should be a big priority. That'll be up either Friday or next Monday. And then we got the roundtable. I'm bringing you on, Kev. We're going to do it.
That's right.
So we'll do the free agency roundtable. So I got that going. And then my yearly tradition, free agency wish list, will be up a week before free agency. So, yeah, full force ahead.
Yeah. Good stuff there, guys. Definitely check out that most recent piece. It's up on the site right now. Terrific work by Allen, as always. And I'm sure we'll have Allen on throughout the offseason to continue breaking down all this just limitless offseason content, especially this year of all years where there's actually money to spend. So, hallelujah. Also with us tonight, the co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, speaking of this question had a part for you. He says, cough once if you want QS to be the next head coach. So, I don't know what that means. So, yeah. yeah. Gotcha. So, I can't interpret that. That's up for the people to decide. But Adnan, he is at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you'd like to plug?
Got a happy cough out of nowhere there.
I don't know what happened.
So I have my franchise tag primer up. I've been every year at around the start of the franchise tag window, I go back and update my franchise tag primer to reflect the previous year's happenings with the franchise tag, this year's franchise tag numbers, and outside of that, the article is just a wealth of information, evergreen information about everything you could possibly want to know about regarding the franchise tag. I wrote it in 2018, and every year I've been updating it since to reflect that specific off season. Check that out.
Yeah,
I can't believe you guys want Quentin Spain as the new coach of the Atlanta Hawks. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Quentin Spain, the god. Yeah, the god.
Terrible.
I mean, to be honest, how many people with the initials QS are there?
I only a nerd like me would know. I remember Quentin Spain because he infamously was trash talking the Titans after the Bengals allowed 9 sacks. So like Quentin Spain would always be remembered for all the wrong reasons in my mind for managing the trash talk the opposing team after allowing 9 sacks.
Yeah, that was bold.
Well, I do love head coaches whose name is Quinn in Atlanta. I think,
that's true.
I think
you were a big fan.
Many of those as possible. Yeah.
Big fan of Quinn. Yeah. So, but guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, the NFL Combine position previews have just started. Today was Edge. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. Thursday will be interior defensive line, and we'll keep going in that order until we get through all of them. With the Combine kicking off next week. So lots of draft content to look forward to there. We'll be getting into the official scouting reports after that as well. So lots to look forward to. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and hanging out with us tonight. If you're listening to the show on the podcast audio, please leave us that 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Again, we really appreciate all that. If you're interested in supporting the show, you can go to patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Like I said, patrons, next Q&A session is going to be Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be posting about that soon as well. If you're interested in taking part, just sign up on the Patreon. Love to have you, and it's a lot of fun, those sessions. You also get some exclusive perks like early ad-free access to all the podcast episodes and more, so definitely check that out, guys. But until next time, guys, we appreciate you. We'll see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. once again for the next edition of the Falcoholic Live. Until then, have a great night, folks. We'll see you next time.